Have you ever heard of a group that started with just 9 men and grew into one of the most powerful organizations the world has ever seen, only to vanish almost overnight? This is the story of the Knights Templar. It all began in 1119. A French knight, Hugues de Payens, and 8 of his companions had an idea. They went to King Baldwin II of Jerusalem and offered to create a military brotherhood. Their mission? To protect Christian pilgrims traveling on the dangerous roads to the Holy Land. The king agreed and gave them a headquarters on the Temple Mount, the very site of the ancient Solomon's Temple. They called themselves the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon. We know them as the Templars. At first, they lived up to their name. They were poor, but that didn't last long. Within 20 years, their fortunes had completely turned around. The most powerful churchman of the era, Bernard of Clairvaux, championed their cause. In 1129, the church officially recognized them, giving them their own strict rulebook that dictated every part of their lives, from their diet to their battle strategies. The Pope himself backed them, granting them tax exemptions and the freedom to operate across borders without answering to local lords. Donations of land and money poured in from kings and nobles all over Europe. By the 13th century, the Templars weren't just soldiers. They were bankers. They created what was essentially the first international banking system. Imagine this. You could deposit your money in Paris, get a special coded letter, travel to Jerusalem, and withdraw your funds there. No more carrying heavy, risky gold across hundreds of miles of hostile territory. They owned castles and vast lands across the Holy Land, Cyprus, and all over Europe, from England to Spain. They were a powerful state within every state. And then, a poet changed their story forever. In the early 1200s, a Bavarian poet named Wolfram von Eschenbach wrote a famous story called Parsifal. In it, he described a group of holy knights, called Templisten, who guarded a mystical object, the Holy Grail. The Templars themselves never made this claim, but the idea was electrifying. The most famous military order in the world, guarding the most sacred relic in Christendom? The connection was too perfect for storytellers to ignore. From that moment on, the legend of the Templars as guardians of the Grail was born, and it's a legend that has stuck with them ever since. For another century, the real Templars continued to grow in wealth and influence. They seemed untouchable, but they had made a powerful enemy, King Philip IV of France. Philip was deeply in debt to the Templars and coveted their immense wealth. He planned his move carefully. Then came Friday, October 13, 1307, in a stunning, coordinated strike across all of France. King Philip's men arrested every Templar they could find. The charges were shocking and bizarre. Denying Christ, spitting on the cross, engaging in secret, obscene rituals, and even worshipping a mysterious idol head called Baphomet. Under brutal torture, many knights confessed. Later, many of them recanted their confessions, but it was too late. The trials dragged on for years, a spectacle of politics and power. Pope Clement V, under pressure from King Philip, officially dissolved the order in 1312. Their property was seized and given to another order, the Knights Hospitaller, though Philip managed to keep a large chunk for himself. The final tragic act came on March 18, 1314. The last Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, was brought to a small island in the Seine River in Paris and burned at the stake. Legend says that as the flames rose, de Molay shouted a curse, summoning both King Philip and Pope Clement to face God's judgment within a year. And strangely enough, they both died within that time frame. Philip was dead by November, and Clement passed away the following spring. Was it a curse fulfilled, or just a story created after the fact to give the Templars a final dramatic victory? We'll likely never know for sure. And so, the Knights Templar, once the most powerful order in the Western world, disappeared from history. But their legend, filled with secrets, treasure, and the Holy Grail, continues to captivate us to this day. Dante Alighieri had been watching the Templar suppression unfold in real time while composing the Divine Comedy. He placed Clement V among the damned. He described the destruction of the Templars in terms borrowed from martyrdom. His was not the only voice saying the Templars had been framed, but it was the loudest and the one that survived. The Church declared the Templars heretics. The most influential poet in the Latin world declared their destroyers the true sinners. Literature had rendered a verdict that no subsequent papal document could fully overwrite. The 5th, 10th, and 16th centuries saw the Templars absorbed into the broader esoteric tradition. Writers working in the Hermetic and Neoplatonic revival found the suppressed order a useful symbol, a vessel for the idea that genuine sacred knowledge had been deliberately destroyed by corrupt institutional power. The Templars had not found the Grail in this telling. They had found something older and more dangerous, and the trial had been the burial. In 1751, a German nobleman named Karl von Hund established the rite of strict observance within Freemasonry, claiming that his order was the direct inheritor of the Templar succession. He said the secret knowledge of the Knights had been passed down through an unbroken chain of initiated masters since the year 1314. He called these figures the unknown superiors. He never produced them. He died without naming them. But the strict observance spread through hundreds of lodges before it collapsed, and the idea it planted, that Freemasonry was the Templars in disguise, fed directly into the conspiracy literature of the 19th century and beyond. By the 19th century, the Templars had become a canvas for whatever a given era needed them to be. The Romantics needed martyrs to set against institutional corruption. Occultists needed a lineage connecting their practices to medieval warrior monks. Eliphas Levi drew his famous image of Baphomet in 1854, not from any medieval source, but from his own synthesis of alchemical and Kabbalistic symbolism. That image became the face of the Templars' supposed heresy, reproduced in every book about secret societies ever since. In 1982, 3 researchers published Holy Blood, Holy Grail, arguing that the Templars had discovered documentary proof that Jesus survived the crucifixion and fathered a bloodline, protected ever since by a secret society called the Priory of Sion. It was a bestseller. The Priory of Sion turned out to have been fabricated in the 1950s by a French conman named Pierre Plantard. The researchers either did not know this or did not let it slow them down. 20 years later, Dan Brown incorporated the same mythology into the Da Vinci Code, which sold 80 million copies. Between those 2 books, in 1988, Umberto Eco published Foucault's Pendulum, a novel in which 3 editors invent an elaborate Templar conspiracy as a joke and watch it escape their control and become real. Eco was not writing a thriller. He was writing a structural diagnosis of how Templar mythology self-perpetuates, how silence looks like a secret, how a secret that persists for 7 centuries must be protecting something enormous, and how that logic, once loose in a culture, cannot be argued out of it. It is the only major work in the Templar literary tradition that also explains the mechanism by which the tradition exists. It did not slow anyone down either. The literary Templars are more powerful than the historical Templars ever were. The historical order lasted fewer than 200 years. The literary order has been continuously expanding for 800. Every attempt to suppress it, the trial, the dissolution, the burning of Damale, each of these acts added energy to the myth rather than depleting it. Suppression became proof of importance. Silence became evidence of secrets too dangerous to speak. The Templars became the template, literally, for how Western culture imagines a secret society. They are the model that every subsequent conspiracy draws on when it needs an ancient order with forbidden knowledge and a reason for hiding. We do not know what the Templars actually found on the Temple Mount, if they found anything. We do not know what, if anything, the confessions extracted under torture actually described. We do not know what happened to the Templar fleet that vanished from the port of La Rochelle in 1307, just days before the arrests. What we know is that the silence they left behind was exactly the right shape for a myth. And for 800 years, the world has been filling it.